All right, menti.com, M-E-N-T-I.com. The code is 516416, 516416. Spots right here, Michael. Get right front and center. 516416. How many people we have in? Oh, just shut down, didn't it? There we go. We had 17 in so far. Okay. Good, good, good. 2 are question marks. Don't know what that means exactly. How you guys doing tonight? Good. Doing all right? All right. Welcome back. Anybody else still trying to log in here? If you're logging in, raise your hand for me so I can see who's... Okay, so I'm waiting on a couple. That's good. We'll wait for you. You're in? Okay. (516416) for our quiz today. This is a quiz from last week's material, so the first one's you can put in whatever you want to on that. Name a reason to study historical geography of the Holy Land. Clarification of Bible reading, good. Knowing the places Jesus walked. Understanding the Bible's descriptions. To have background knowledge of the places where God chose to reveal himself. Good, good answers. As a visual learner, it helps me make the words of Scripture real, yes. To better understand the Bible and the people in the Bible. Good, you guys did really well. I'll have to scroll through all those answers tomorrow as well. All right, I've got 28 in. Anybody still trying to get in? 20. Anybody else still trying to get in? All right, I'm going to go ahead and do the next question then. Here we go. This is where the real quiz starts. Starting quiz now. Answer fast to get more points. In class last week, we referred to the Holy Land as... I'm going to get multiple choice on this one. Look at your phone. Did you guys get multiple choice popping up yet? Looks like it's taking a while. I think it's waiting for everybody to get in there. What's this question mark for? It's not getting started. Is that because we have people still trying to get in, or what's the matter here? I'm not sure what this 4 question mark is answered. I haven't seen that before. I don't know what it's doing to me. I guess so. Is this thing on? Anybody? You guys able to answer that question? Okay. Okay. Does anybody still have a question mark on their phone someplace? No? I'm not sure why it's not letting us go forward. I think it has something to do with that question mark down there in the right-hand corner, but I don't know how to fix that. It's going down, going up. Maybe some of you are somewhat in, but not completely in. I don't know. I'm going to have to give up on this if it doesn't work here in a second. What is it doing? All right. I'm going to try reset results and see what happens. Okay. 516416. Everybody's got that, right? Well, you guys, I don't know what it's doing to us here. Okay. Went back. All right. Yep. Let me try to go back again, see what happens. Aha. All right. So, yes. 30 of you got that one right. I'm not sure what it's doing to us, but 30 got that one right. It is the land between, right? Okay. Let's go to the next one. Lord willing. You guys all right? Is it working? Well, now I've only got 26 of you, 27 of you. Yeah, what is the land between? Time's up. Ah, it's the last one, you guys. Not the first, but the second two. You got to read all the way through the answers. Read all the way through the answers. Be careful. I know, it's tricky. Trying to get you to pay attention, I know. Not good? Yeah, it's between all those things. All right, think about this one here. According to the discussion on cats and mice last week, what are cats? Two seconds. All right, most of you got it right. Yes, it was, yes, large world empires of the Middle East, okay? Large world. Ready? Next question. Oh, here we got a leaderboard first. Oh, all right. Let's see who's winning overall. Thinky. All right, nice. Answer fast to get more points. Which of the following would qualify as a cat, according to the definition last week? Yeah. All right, it was Assyria, yes. Hey, you guys, don't get confused with Assyria and Syria, right? Those two things are confusing. It's Assyria is the big world empire. Syria is just one of the mice. Yeah, if you don't get in time, I think you get it wrong. Which of these would not be a mouse? Not a mouse, you guys. Too tricky? Not. All right, yeah, most of you got it right. That's Egypt, because Egypt is a cat, so it can't be a mouse. You're catching on? Okay. By the end of the semester, you guys, this will be easy. Ooh, this one's a little bit harder. Should give you more points for this one. Although once you see the answers, it's not that hard. Via Maris, what is it? Yes, most of you got that one right, the way of the sea. The King's Highway is the one on the other side, on the desert side. That's called the King's Highway on the other side over there. So Via Maris runs up this way. The King's Highway runs up this way. Answer fast to get more points. On last week's route map, what is the Aruna Pass an example of? Read all the answers. Okay. Yes, most of you got it right. Okay. Yes. All right. That may have been our last one. Let's see. I think that was it. Yep, that was it. Let's see who won. Oh, Thinky wins just barely. Anybody want to admit to being Thinky? Nobody wants to admit to it? Oh, all right, good job. Nice. Surely got it. All right. Hey, if you guys, during the class period, if you want to stay logged in, if you want to ask questions, you can do it right here as well, and we'll try to remember to look at it at the end, and I can answer those questions for you. So if you feel like answering questions throughout class, if you stay logged in, you can ask any question you want to anonymously, and we can answer them at the end, all right? All right, let me just give you a little bit of orientation of what we're doing tonight. Again, this is week 2 of Historical Geography of the Holy Land. We're going to start to zoom ourselves in just a little bit more. Jordy, we're going to have to attach you with this, so you're going to have to be close enough so that this can plug into that, if that's possible. Like this.
You want me to scoot down?
You want? You should be fine right there, right? You gonna be all right? Okay. Is it? Okay. Are we good? just make sure you get the right input on that. I'm going to start the sign-in sheet coming around. Just something a little bit different this week, you guys. We're going to go till 8 o'clock with our normal class. And then from 8 to 8:30, we're going to do an information meeting for those who are planning to go to Israel this year. Now, if you're not planning to go to Israel this year, you're welcome to stay for the information meeting, hear everything that we're going to say about that trip. If you are going, please do stick around. I have things like packing list and some more information to give to you. Some recommendations for things to buy ahead of time, get ready for your trip to Israel as well. So again, everybody's welcome to stay if you want to, but you don't have to. You can leave at 8 o'clock if you don't want to hear the informational meeting things. We are going to zoom in a little bit on the Promised Land tonight, spend a little bit more time, a little bit more close up. I've got to find my notes. Sorry, just one second. There we are. So we have, do you need another input? Okay, let's see. Where's the other inputs on this thing? There we go. There we go. Should find it now. Okay. All right, before we get started, let's pray. Dearest Lord God, we do thank you for a wonderful day today. Thank you for what you've provided for us in terms of a nice warm place to meet together tonight. I thank you for brothers and sisters who come out on a Wednesday night to hear from you. And we think of that happening all over campus tonight with the choir right next door to us and men's and women's ministries taking place and the chorus happening and children are meeting and youth groups as well. Lord, I pray that you would be present with us. You are present with us wherever we go. There you are as well. But Lord, I pray that we would be aware of your presence and submitted to it, especially as we look into your word tonight. I pray that you would cause us to have attention to who you are and what you are doing in the world around us, what you've done in history, but also what you're doing even in our day. And so, Lord, would you give us attention to your spirit tonight? Would you help us to cooperate with you and with your spirit? And Lord, I pray that we would just be clear in the things that we present and that everything we do in here would be pleasing and honoring to you. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Do we get it? We still haven't got it going, Jordy? Sorry, guys. Just a second. Should be right there. Try to go here. I've got a PowerPoint. There we go. There we go. All right, go to the next slide on there, Jordy. Would you mind just one of those lights? Maybe turn off one of the lights back there, make it a little bit less bright. That might work. All right. This is our map from last week. You guys remember we were looking at a big view and talking about the land between? And we talked about the land between what? And we just did this on our quiz as well. It's between two barriers. Remember these two barriers? Let me find my little pointer. Just disappear. Oh, it's right here. So the two barriers that we have are the Mediterranean, right? Mediterranean is a barrier in ancient times because sailing was very difficult. It was hard to move and expensive to move through the Mediterranean Sea. We might think of that today as a highway, but it's not in ancient times at least. And then we have the other barrier down here in the Arabian desert. You certainly don't want to move a large army or a large caravan through the Arabian desert. It's very difficult to do that successfully. You can do it in smaller groups, but in larger groups, much more difficult to do that. Okay? And so those two barriers are right on the edges of this nice little highway right here, a nice, easy way to travel. Also, Israel is between three major continents, of course, Europe, Asia, and Africa down here. And remember, trade wants to move between these three major continents in ancient times. That's where the money is moving goods and people through that area. And so, if you're one of the major empires down here in Egypt, or in Assyria or Babylon, or later up here in Rome or Greece, you want to control this area because that gives you the opportunity to control the flow of goods through there, right? And so if you don't control it, then you're going to pay large taxes to the people who do control it. And so it's very much an economic incentive for you to keep control of this little area right here. And God, we said last week, very much wanted his people to be at the center of the world at that time. One of God's strategies for reaching the people in the Old Testament was to put a special people in a special place so that all the world would come to know him that way, would have an opportunity to come to know him that way. Okay? And that's actually not much different than our world today, right? He has created a special people, the church, whom he's put his Spirit in and put us out through all the entire world so that people would have an opportunity to rub shoulders with Christians. And so you play the same role in your world that Israel played in their world. Now, I'll tell you from Old Testament times that Israel almost constantly failed in their role. Either they withdrew from the world around them and hid up in the hill country, which we'll talk about a little bit today, or they just ignored the rest of the world around them and let them go by on that highway without any kind of contact with them. You guys, we could live that same way today as well, right? We have a choice to make in everything that we do. We can hide from the world around us, maybe make a small, maybe a fortress mentality, right, where we just say, okay, we'll all get together and hide together and associate with one another, but just ignore the world around us. Or we can engage like God wants us to do with the world around us. In fact, in the New Testament, Paul tells us that we were made to be ambassadors for Christ, that he is making his appeal, that God is making his appeal through us, be reconciled to God. Okay, so those are the choices that we have to make, that Israel had to make as well. There's one notable exception in the Old Testament when Israel actually did its job in a positive way. And this is one of my favorite things. With Solomon's time, in about, it's 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel 17, about that area. There's a visitor that comes from down in Africa, remember? She's the Queen of Sheba is what we call her. She's from a place down here in Central Africa, actually, and she makes her way up to Jerusalem because she has heard of Solomon's wisdom. Remember when Solomon first became king as a young man, he cried out to God and asked him for wisdom to govern the people. And so God granted him wisdom, but also wealth and power and fame and much else that went with it. And so he used that wisdom to build up a great and peaceful kingdom, which means, from last week, let me see if you guys can remember this, if a mouse like Solomon was able to build a large kingdom, what does that mean about the cats at his day? They were weaker, relatively weak, right? And so when the cats are weak, then a mouse like Solomon can have a great expansion to his kingdom. And that's what he did. The biggest extent of the kingdom under the United Monarchy was during Solomon's reign. And he brings all 12 tribes together, and they're successful militarily, they're successful economically, they're successful actually culturally as well. They're able to build a lot of new buildings and fortify the major cities around them. And they're also successful in evangelism. And so that Queen of Sheba hears about Solomon and all of his wisdom, and she comes and visits him, and she looks all around his kingdom, and Solomon shows her everything, and she asks him a lot of questions. In fact, it says in Scripture that she asked him everything that was on her mind. Not exactly sure how long that took. Was that 5 minutes or 50 years? I don't know how long it took her to empty her mind, but she did. And at the end of it, she makes the right conclusion. She comes to Solomon and she says, not, hey, Solomon, it must be because you're such a great person that all of this stuff has happened. But she says, it must be because your God is great, that you are truly blessed by your God. And that is exactly the conclusion that God wanted her to draw from Solomon's wisdom and wealth and power and peace during his kingdom. God wanted the watching world to see him on display through Solomon. And that's the way that at one time that we have recorded in Scripture that it worked. Ironically, you guys, it actually works the other way too. When Israel is disobedient to God, when they don't bring fame to his name, then God also punishes them. And how he does that is he takes them into exile into a foreign land. And it's funny because when they get into exile, they are constantly asked, why did your God allow you to go into exile? And the constant response that they give to that question is because we were disobedient to him. And we're going to look at that a lot this semester, that God, either way, God gets the glory and the credit for what's going on. If Israel obeys, then people should look and observe and say there's something unusual, not about you, but about your God, and the way that he's blessing you. And if they disobey, it's exactly the opposite. They go into exile, but God still gets the credit for that. It is God who brings that about for them. And we study that a lot in Bible 1 and Bible 2 as well. Tonight we're going to zoom in a little bit on this land between, and we're going to go from this big kind of world view to where God placed Israel to a much smaller view. Let's go to the next slide there, Jordy, please. And we're going to, on your map, in your notes, and I know I'm going to have to make you go back and forth between page 1 and page 2, but you have a copy of this map here. And for the most part, it's a blank map, okay? And so we're going to get to know the 5 regions 5 geological regions of the land of Israel tonight. And we're going to start by getting ourselves oriented a little bit by this map. And so you're going to fill it in. I hope you have a pen or pencil. You're going to fill in some places on your map here so that you are able to interact with your class. You're taking you back to elementary school, I think, or junior high or something at this point. And on this map, I want to just orient ourselves a little bit. On a map, normally, what direction is located up here? North, right? So that's what this map is showing us as well. North here, south here, west here, and east over here, okay? I also have this other map over here. Maybe, I don't know, this is probably easier to see for the moment anyway, okay? Interestingly, on ancient maps, east was always the top of the map. They were always eastward oriented. So they would always turn it sideways a bit, but I didn't want to confuse you tonight, so we're going to do it the American modern way instead of the ancient way here. North at the top, south at the bottom, west over here, east over here, okay? And now our barriers, I just want to orient us to that again. Obviously, you see one of them here is the Mediterranean, okay? That's the Mediterranean is the barrier to that side. The Arabian Desert will be over here, off the map just a little bit. Basically, it starts on this side of the Jordan River, but we're going to orient ourselves that way, okay? So the Arabian Desert is that other major barrier over here. Now, of course, we still have Europe up here, Asia up here, and Africa down here. All right, you oriented a little bit to your map now? Know where the barriers are, and we know where north, south, east, and west are on that map. Okay? Tonight we're going to walk through those major areas. There's 5 different major areas to the Promised Land, and I'm going to show you piece by piece what those look like. Jordy, next slide for us, please. Okay, this is a picture of the Mediterranean Sea. This is from one of my favorite spots. This is from Joppa, and Joppa is the place where Jonah sailed from in our Old Testament. He was headed out this direction, headed out east. He wanted to go to Tarshish, away from the presence of the Lord, as if that were possible. He's supposed to go the opposite direction. He decides, actually, he should have gone the opposite direction by camel. And he decides the best thing that I can do is do exactly the opposite of what God says. So I'm going to go this direction by boat. And so he hires a boat. So he actually buys a ticket and gets on right here at Joppa. Now, Joppa was the only ancient port on the whole coast of Israel for ancient times. Until Herod built a place that we're going to talk about next week, Caesarea Maritima, there was no suitable place to sail from except for here. And in fact, the harbor at Joppa isn't even a harbor. If you're going to get on a seagoing vessel from Joppa, you would have to take a skiff, a little rowboat, out to a vessel waiting out here. In fact, that is Jonah's boat, still anchored right there in this picture. I happened to be there on the day when Jonah's boat was visible, and so I took the picture of this. Actually, sorry, that's just kidding about that. But this place also, where we're standing right here as this picture is being taken, is a place where in Acts chapter 10, Acts chapter 10, Peter has a vision of a blanket with animals coming down out of heaven. And he is told in that vision to go to Caesarea to meet somebody there, to meet Cornelius there. Okay, so that happens right here on this spot where this picture is taken from. That's a picture of the Mediterranean. You guys want to go to the Mediterranean? It's a nice, beautiful place. Yes, Felipe? Can you describe the coast for a second? Like, what does it look like? Yeah, what's the coast? I mean, it's similar to the California coast in a way. There's not there are, like, this part right here, there would be sandy beaches, kind of rocky beaches as well. It's maybe not as wide as some of our beaches in Southern California, but the sand is similar. The water is generally much warmer than we have here in California. Although right now, if you were in Tel Aviv, which is right close to where this is, the temperature outside is about 50 degrees. The water, I don't know what the water temperature would be, but I would guess it's still in the 60s probably, a little bit warmer than that at the Mediterranean. So it's beautiful, it's warm, and alternates between rocky coast and sandy coast. So pretty much like our west coast in a lot of ways for that. If you come in just a little ways inland, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, it's what's called the coastal plain. And naturally, the coastal plain tends to become swampy. But there's areas of it where it's just flat and dry, where you can walk a caravan through or an army through. But over time, it tends to become swampy unless it is irrigated or drained by man. So does that kind of answer your question, Felipe? Okay, so that's what it looks like there. Let's go to the next slide, Jage. And now I'm going to take you to the desert on this side over here. So that's the first thing I want you to write on your map is on that right-hand side of your map. Right in the middle, just write desert. Anybody been to a desert before? Should I describe to you, Felipe, what a desert looks like? Actually, their desert is very similar to our desert, you guys. In fact, the only 2 places in the world where Joshua trees grow, you might know that, are in our desert and in their desert. Okay, so you can find Joshua trees there too. I don't remember seeing many Joshua trees in Israel, but I've been told that they grow there as well, and that's where they get their name, Joshua tree, as well from Joshua, from our Bible. Okay, so it's very similar to our desert, but there's a lot of but it actually gets sort of like the Arizona desert as you think about it as well, with some canyons and other things that are part of that, the wilderness area. And I'll show you some pictures of that coming up here. So the desert is that first area that I want you to know about. One of the 5 regions that we look at in Israel then is the desert. Next picture, Jage. And the next feature is right on, okay, first I got to tell you about some bodies of water, okay? On our map here, you'll see this lake, actually called the sea in our Bible most of the time. That is the Sea of Galilee, okay? The Sea of Galilee is right here. Sea of Galilee. It's called many different things in our Bible. Sea of Kinneret, the Sea of Gennesaret, what else is it called? Sea of Galilee. I think those are the major things. We'll talk about that next week as well a little bit more. It's called the Sea of Kinnereth or Gennesaret because of its shape. And in Hebrew, the word Kinnereth means harp. And so it's kind of shaped like a harp. Can you see the shape of that as a harp a little bit? Maybe you're not all that familiar with what a harp looks like, but that's the basic shape of a harp is what the Sea of Galilee is there. Okay? So this is the Jordan River that flows from north to south along the Jordan Valley, also called the Jordan Rift Valley. So we're going to talk about that a lot tonight, Jordan Rift Valley. Okay, from north to south. Up here in the north, right at where the river begins, is at it's at a series of springs. There's 3 major springs at the base of Mount Hermon. And Mount Hermon is up here in the north, okay, right at the top of your map is Mount Hermon. And Mount Hermon is a decent-sized mountain, about 5,000 feet or so in elevation. And it does have snow on it during the wintertime, and you can ski on it during the wintertime. And it's a huge limestone mountain that has a lot of underground caverns in it. So limestone is known for being porous, and so it can have huge caverns or caves underground that store water. And so when it rains or snows on the top of Mount Hermon, the water seeps down into the mountain, collects in huge caves, underground lakes, and then eventually flows out the bottom of the mountain in springs. And that's what a spring is really like. There's holes in the bottom of the mountain, basically, where that water is forced down and forced out over time. Okay? And so there's always water flowing out of the springs at the base of Mount Hermon. And there's 3 of those major springs that flow out there and form the Jordan River. So the Jordan River flows from Mount Hermon down into this small little lake called the Hula Lake, H-U-L-E-H, okay, which actually doesn't really exist anymore. It's been almost completely drained. It's kind of a swampy, marshy area in some places now when it rains hard, but it doesn't really exist anymore. And then from the Hula Lake, flows down into the lake, the big lake here called the Sea of Galilee. Now the Sea of Galilee isn't really a sea. It's really a lake, and not even a very big lake. It's about 14 miles from north to south, and about 7 miles wide at its widest point. So about 14 miles long, about 7 miles wide at its widest point. Okay? From there, the Jordan River keeps flowing down from the Sea of Galilee all the way into this huge lake, which is much bigger than the Sea of Galilee. That is called, anyone know? The Dead Sea. The Dead Sea, okay? So the Dead Sea down here at the bottom. The Dead Sea is much bigger than the Sea of Galilee. And we'll get to that here in just a little bit, okay? This whole area on your map, where the Jordan River flows through, all the way down to the Dead Sea, and even further down than that. In fact, actually, turn to your next map on the next page. I want to show you something real quick. You see that greenish blue that runs right down the middle of that map from top to bottom? Yep. That whole thing right there is actually what's called the Syro-African Rift. Syro-African Rift, that means, so S-Y-R-O dash African Rift. Syro-African means that it runs from Syria, not Assyria, but Syria. By the end of this class, you guys, you'll know the difference between Assyria and Syria, okay? From Syria, which is Israel's neighbor to the north, it runs from there all the way down to the middle of Africa, to Lake Victoria, actually, all the way down to the middle of Africa. And the rift means that it's a gash in the face of the earth, okay? In fact, this is the largest gash in the face of the earth, okay? It runs from Syria, like I said, just north of Israel, down into Africa. The lowest point, which is also the lowest point on the surface of the earth, is the Dead Sea. And the Dead Sea is 1,400 feet below sea level. 1,400 feet below sea level, you guys. That's way down there. Okay? The Sea of Galilee also lies in the rift, and it is also below sea level at about 700 feet below sea level. Okay? So even the Sea of Galilee, on its surface, is more than 700 feet below sea level. There was probably a time, maybe even just inside of the biblical times, maybe just before Abraham, when this entire Syro-African rift was a lake, or a river if you want to look at it that way, a large river. Okay? I believe, and I think what happened, and I think we talked about it briefly last week, is that when Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed, they would have been located down here at the bottom of the Dead Sea, and it actually became a dam for that whole valley. Okay? And that's what killed the Dead Sea. There was no longer any water flowing out of it, and so it became stagnant and dead after that. Okay? So that is the Syro-African rift. What else can I tell you about that? So, by comparison, Jerusalem sits at about 2,500 feet above sea level. Okay? So if you went from the Dead Sea, right here, just about 30 miles this way, you'd hit Jerusalem. So over 30 miles, just that 30 miles, you go from minus 1,700 to plus 2,500 in elevation. Yeah. Yeah, so is that what we're at, about 2,500 above? Yeah. Okay. And actually, we're at the same, almost at the same latitude as Jerusalem is as well. The Dead Sea is about 31 miles long, so much longer than the Sea of Galilee, 31 miles long, and about 9 miles wide at its widest. That's the Dead Sea, 31 miles long and about 9 miles wide at its widest. Last week we also talked about how many times more salty it is than the rest of the oceans or seas. It's about 9.6 times the salinity of the ocean on average. And actually its salinity, if you are into this kind of thing, is about 34.2%. It's about 34.2% mineral content. It's crazy. All right, questions about the desert or the Mediterranean or the Jordan Rift Valley? Any questions about that?
Tell me again, Sodom and Gomorrah, your thoughts.
Yeah.
Gomorrah was destroyed and created the dam,
and that killed the Dead Sea. That's what made the Dead Sea dead. Okay, so when Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed, remember God said He saturated the whole place with fire and brimstone, and I think it was enough. I think we don't know exactly where Sodom and Gomorrah were located, but we do know they were down in this region somewhere. My guess is that one of them was on this side of the rift, the other was on this side of the rift, and when God destroyed both of those, there was enough to spill over to dam up that area and cause the Dead Sea to be dead. And part of the way that we know that, I think, from Scripture, is that remember when Abraham and Lot, when they were up looking over the Promised Land, and Lot looked down towards Sodom and Gomorrah, and he said, that's what I want to choose as my inheritance, because it's green and lush. Well, if you go to that area today, right, Mark, it is not green or lush. There was no way you would call it any of those things. And why I think that is the case is because the water's dead there. It's just not flowing like it once had. We also have records in the Old Testament of wild animals, bears and lions, jaguars, being in this area as well. Again, today it would not support that kind of what is that called? Wildlife. There you go. Wouldn't support that kind of thing. So I think there was a time when it would, but God's judgment on Sodom and Gomorrah changed the ecology there. Yes?
So I have a random question.
Okay, Ashley.
Lot's wife got turned into a pillar of salt, right?
Yes.
Right there around Sodom and Gomorrah. Maybe that's why the Dead Sea is so salty.
Yeah. Well, there are salt pillars that have been claimed to be. You can find pictures even today. Well, people will say this is Lot's wife. That there's a salt pillar in that region. But a tremendous amount of salt. Obviously, salt is harvested from that area today too. A tremendous amount of salt is harvested from there and sold, exported from there too. So yeah, the salt content is tremendous there. Absolutely. And that, certainly. It was in this region. We know that much, and that's what's part of that. All right. So moving then from that, let's go to the next picture there, Jordy. So this is what the Jordan Rift looks like, and what the wilderness of the desert there looks like. And you can see the camel there as well. See, these would be the hills on the other side of the Jordan Valley, and this is the Jordan Rift Valley itself. Very dry, very hot, very miserable. And so that's what Dr. Bookman always says, as soon as you get in there, you want to get out. And so everything you can do to get up out of that area is what you want to do. All right, next one, Jage. Next to the west, okay, so our next, so between them, the eastern range, okay. Between the desert and the Jordan Rift Valley, there's what's called the Eastern Range. Okay, this is a set of hills that are on the far side of the Jordan River from Israel, in what today is the country of Jordan. So the Eastern Range, a set of steep hills on that side. Okay, they come up to a top and to a plateau. They flatten out once you get to the top of them. And so this is where Moses stood with the people of Israel, looking over into the Promised Land. They would have been standing on the Eastern Range on top of the plateau there, looking over the Jordan River into the Promised Land, which would have been lower in elevation for them, but also across a major rift, this whole Rift Valley right here. Okay, so that's the Eastern Range. We're not going to go into a lot of detail about that. We'll talk about it a little bit more when we get to the Jordan Rift section of this class, when we focus in on that a little bit more. Let's go to the next one, Jake. Eastern Range looks like this. Okay, this is looking across the Jordan River back towards the east, towards what was Moab, what was Edom on the eastern side. Now today is modern-day Jordan. Starts to look like this, although this was a relatively green time of the year. Most of the time it doesn't look this green down there. This is during the springtime. When we get there in June, it will look much more bleak than that on that side. This is also called the hill country, let's go to the next one. That's the Central Range. Let's go to the next one, Jade. This is the Central Range, okay? So we have the east, working from east to west, we have the desert, we have the Eastern Range, the Jordan Rift Valley, and now we come to the Central Range, or the Central Hill Country, as it's sometimes called. In fact, that's what I'm going to call it most of this class, the Central Hill Country, or the Hill Country. Now, the Central Hill Country is actually divided into two different parts. Basically, this whole word where I've got central is called the Hill Country of Judah in our Bible. The Hill Country of Judah, and much takes place there. That is where Jerusalem is located. It's where Bethlehem is located. It's where Hebron is located. So many of our major cities, especially in the southern part of Judah, are where this word central is scrawled on our map. And those are hills. I hesitate to call them mountains. Some might call them mountains, but I grew up in Colorado. We don't call them mountains at their elevation. The place where it says range is actually what would be called the hill country of Ephraim, E-P-H-R-A-I-M. So the hill country is divided into two parts, the hill country of Judah and the hill country of Ephraim, E-P-H-R-A-I-M. Okay? This is where most of the action in our Bibles takes place. This is where most of our tribes, the 12 tribes, settle themselves on this hill country. Okay? Why do they do that? Because it is secure. When you live up on a hill, especially in ancient times, when you build a city, two things are important to you. The ability to protect yourself, which means having the high ground, if possible, and then a water supply. You have to have a way to protect yourself, and you have to have a water supply. Okay? And so the hill country is good for those kinds of things. Much more water falls on this hill country than falls over here. So let me find for you Jerusalem on this map, just get you oriented a little bit more as well. So the easiest way on any map to find Jerusalem quickly, okay, is to find the northern edge of the Dead Sea. Okay, the Dead Sea is easy to find. You find the very northern tip, and you come in about a third of the way towards the coast. Okay, so about a third of the way towards the coast is where Jerusalem is. It's just a little bit almost where that A is on my central on that map. Okay, Jerusalem gets almost as much rainfall a year as Seattle does. Yeah, almost as much rainfall as Seattle does. Okay, a lot of rain. If you move just 35 miles to the east, it comes down to less than an inch per year of rain. So less than we get per year compared with what Seattle gets per year. And it's only a distance of about 35 miles in change of that. Okay? So incredibly dry over here, and plenty wet over here. Now, most of their rain falls during this time of the year. So right now, from about November till about April is when they get their rain. When we get there in June, if we get rain, it'll be not quite a miracle, but close. I've been in Jerusalem when it's raining in June, but it's very rare. It doesn't happen very often, okay? It does occasionally snow in Jerusalem. They do get snow every once in a while, but last year they got quite a bit of snow. I don't know that they have got any this year, but so very different in terms of climate in the hill country as opposed to that Jordan Rift Valley, okay? The temperatures in the summer times, if you're down here in the Rift, it averages about 105 to 115 degrees during the summer down in the Rift. Up in Jerusalem, it's more like 80 during the day and about 65 or so at night. Okay, so much different because they get breezes that flow off of the Mediterranean here and bring in moisture and bring in cool breezes during the summertime. Okay, now, during the wintertime particularly. Now, almost constantly, when it's summertime, the wind blows from east to west. And that means that it's going to be a hot, dry wind coming off of the desert. Okay, so in the summertime, that's when you get warm temperatures all throughout this area. In the wintertime, the winds reverse, and they bring the moist air off of the Mediterraneans this way, okay? And so you get much of your moisture, all of that during the winter time. And their winter and summertime are basically the same months as our time is. Okay, does it make sense to you guys? Okay. The other thing, though, in the evening times, if you're here in Jerusalem, they still get breezes off the Mediterranean. So even about 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock at night, cool breezes start to come up off of the Mediterranean, and they're actually fairly, they're wet breezes as well. And so you'll wake up with dew in the morning, and it'll be nice and pleasant all night long if you're in Jerusalem usually. Okay?
How far from the coast is Jerusalem?
About 60 miles from the coast. About 60, 65 miles. So, yeah, maybe a little bit less. 50, 60 miles in that area. All right? So that's our central range. This is where most of the action takes place. This is where most of the living takes place in our Old Testament in particular, even into our New Testament as well. All right, let's go back. Let's go to the next picture there. One more thing about the central range before we get into. Okay, this is what it looks like. And I know it's a little bit hard to see because this isn't a 3D picture, which is incentive to go to Israel because you get 3D pictures there constantly when you're there. Everything's in 3D. It's amazing, you guys. You stand there and stuff. Okay, you guys are getting it finally. But what the hill country looks like is actually terraced hillside. Can you see that there's kind of lines that come across like this? Okay, these are limestone mountains, okay? And limestone tends to reach particular levels and then break. And so what you get are basically natural stair-stepped hillsides. Now these have been enhanced. People have come through in the years since, and they've taken rocks that have fallen other places, and they've built up walls. Because between each of these terraces, there's fertile ground. And so this is great places for planting vineyards, for planting orchards, because you can have fertile ground with another step above it, with more fertile ground on top of it. But if you don't build up your walls here, then when it rains, all that good soil washes down here, right? And so you want stepped, terraced hillsides that are protected so that all the good soil doesn't just wash down every time it rains there. Okay, so this is great for cultivating crops. However, it's not great for retaining water because limestone, although inside of these places there's going to be caverns, when it hits the limestone, it tends to either bounce off or sink in. It's really hard to retain the water unless you build cisterns, and that's what we have a lot in our Old Testament and our New Testament, is that people build cisterns, which are large basins covered in plaster to retain the water when it falls on them. Otherwise, it falls through, gets down to the underground caverns, and then it runs out in streams and in, what are those called, springs on the other side of the mountains. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so that's what's happening there. What else can I tell you? So these hills are also rugged, steep, and very rocky. So they're not the kind of thing that you could move an army up and over. Does that make sense? If you're trying to move a bunch of chariots, for instance, you cannot do it coming up and down these hills. You have to move on a valley that's between. So if you've got a hill like this on one side, a hill like that on the other side, there's going to be a valley in between, but oftentimes those are narrow valleys. So if you're living up in the hill country, you can easily protect yourself, right? You go up onto the top of these hills with a bunch of rocks, and any army that's coming through that valley, you throw the rocks down on their heads, right? I mean, it's pretty easy to protect yourself, and if they're coming through on chariots, they have no way of getting up that hill unless they get off that chariot to pursue you, right? So you are safe for the most part, especially if you build a fortified city on top of one of those hillsides, because you can watch down to the valleys below. You can see if people are coming, and you can prepare yourself. You can draw, and this is actually what you hear about it a lot in our Old Testament, right? That everybody has their own vine and fig tree. Have you heard that expression before? That's a sign that you're rich and that things are peaceful. Because if you're living under your vine and your fig tree, that means you're living out here in unprotected territory. If an army comes through, you're not going to be living under your vine or your fig tree. You're going to make your way to a fortified city where you and your family can get inside the walls and shelter until that army passes through or passes by. Does that make sense? So in times of peace and security, you can live literally with your trees out in your vineyards, and everything's great. You're out under the open sky, you're rich, you're happy, and you're fat. But in times of when a cat is strong or when the other mice are attacking you, you find a way into a fortified city and protect yourself. Make sense? That's what the hill country is about, and that's why Israel lived in that hill country. They could protect themselves from everybody else passing by. It's a perfect mouse hole. Think about it that way, right? So if a cat comes, you've run into your mouse hole and you're protected there. And that's really what they had to do in order to survive. All right, let's go to the next slide, Jage. So that's the central range. Now we're going to move to the coastal plain, okay? We have how many areas so far? We have the desert, we have the eastern range, that's 2. Jordan Valley, 3. Central range is 4. Now we're to the coastal plain. The coastal plain, okay, and you can see it, I put it in 2 places here. Coastal plain stretches all the way down from the south up here to the north. Last week we talked about there's a cork at the top of that coastal plain, though, remember? There's a mountain that sticks out into the sea, and you can see it just a little bit of a thumb right there. You see that? You see it on your map? See that little thumb? I want you to label that thumb, get to know that thumb. We're going to be talking about it extensively next week. That is Mount Carmel. Mount Carmel is the thumb sticking out into the sea. Okay? It is a mountain, although the highest elevation is about 1,700 feet. So it's not a huge mountain. 1,700 feet is the top of Mount Carmel. Mount Carmel is a cork that juts out into the coastal plain and divides the lower plain from the upper plain. Okay? The lower plain actually has 2 pieces to it. And it's here on my map. The plain of Philistia sounds like a group of people in our Old Testament. Who would that be? The Philistines. Yes, the Philistines are named after this plain or vice versa. I don't know which came first, honestly. I think the plain is named after the Philistines. It's named after the people. So this is the plain of Philistia. Let me spell it for you. It's Phillistia. And that is the southernmost part of the coastal plain. Okay, coastal plain is this whole thing. The plain of Philistia is this part down here. This is where the Philistines live. They are plains-dwelling people. And they're also sea-dwelling people. Most people think that the Philistines came as a group of what are called sea peoples, because we don't know exactly where they came from, but probably came from the Greek part of Europe over here and made their way down to this plain and lived here. Okay? But they're foreigners, most likely, living down here on the plain. Now, they are technologically advanced, honestly, the Philistines. We think about it the other way around, right? When you think about somebody as being a Philistine, we would say that means that they're backwards or knuckle draggers or something like that. That is not the Philistines of our Bible, though. They are technologically advanced. They get iron tools well before the Israelites get iron tools. And so they make chariots well before the Israelites make chariots. Of course, chariots don't do you any good where the Israelites lived. Does that make sense? They do you a lot of good down here on the coastal plain. Because if it's plain, flat, you can drive your chariots and get places much quicker. So you can do much quicker warfare down there with your chariots. Okay? So that's the plain of Philistia down here. You move up a little bit north, and it's called the plain of Sharon, or Sharon, as you may have heard it said as well. S-H-A-R-O-N. Plain of Sharon, S-H-A-R-O-N. Okay? And this is beyond Philistine territory. Controlled more by Israelites, especially after Joshua's conquest of that area. The plain of Sharon. Okay, it gets a little bit narrower as you move from south to north. Down here it's nice and wide. Up here it gets a little bit narrower. When you run into Mount Carmel, all of a sudden you've got a problem, especially if you're moving an army or a caravan. Okay, you come across a mountain that's rising up as a cork at the top of that. And you got to find a way through that. if you are an army or a caravan. And so there are 3 passes. We talked about them a little bit last week. That the Aruna Pass is one of these passes that makes its way through this, the Mount Carmel up into the upper plain. Okay, now on this map, it says this is called the plain of Esdraelon. It'll be the 3rd part of the plain. Esdraelon is Esdraelon, but I want you to remember that as the Jezreel Valley. So you don't have to worry about the plain of Esdraelon. Worry about the Jezreel Valley. Jezreel is Jezreel. And the Jezreel Valley is separated from the coastal plain by, so Jezreel Valley is up here, separated by the coastal plain, from the coastal plain by Mount Carmel there, all right? All right, one more area on our map. First of all, any questions about the coastal plain? Do you guys know everything there is to know about the coastal plain? What if I start asking you questions about the coastal plain? All right, no, you'll find much more about that later on. All right, 5th region is between the Central Range and the coastal plain. But it's mostly right here. Go to the next slide, Jage. Oh, wait, these are pictures of the coastal plain for you. Okay, so this is what it looks like. Big, wide valleys here. You can see the hills off in the distance. These are big, wide valleys. Easy to build a road through there. Easy to take an army through there. Wonderful place to grow crops. Anything you want to do on the coastal plain, that way you can do it. Okay. Easy to cultivate it. This would have been, in fact, in this picture you can see nice fields that are cultivated even today. You can see people hiking down between some hills. They're coming down out of the hill country across the coastal plain here, hiking down right through there. Okay, so that's what it looks like. The coastal plain, the Jezreel Valley, like I said, it looks a lot like the Bakersfield Valley, the San Joaquin Valley. When you drive into it, that's what you can picture that looking like. You come down off of the Grapevine. It's like coming up out of the hill, down out of the hill country and coming into a coastal plain. Is that right, Mark? Would you say that's true? Yeah. Okay. All right. The 5th region. Now I'm losing my voice, you guys. Sorry, I got some tea here. So. Wow, that's great. I made that tea at 4 o'clock and it's still hot. It's great. So the area between. Go to the next slide, Jake. So the area between the coastal plain and the Central Range. It's called, my favorite word in the Old Testament, probably, you guys. It's called the Shphelah. Can you say the Shphelah with me? Shphelah. And it's spelled, you would never guess how it was spelled by how it's said. It's spelled S-H-E-P-H-E-L-A-H. S-H-E-P-H-E-L-A-H. You might think it's Shphelah. But you have to run all those things together and just say Shphelah. Shphelah, okay? The Shphelah is a transitional area between the coastal plain and the Central Range. Transitional in that it starts to have some slightly rolling and gradually increasing hills. And so it's not like you just come off of a plain and run to a mountain. You come off the plain and run into some foothills that then lead you up into the hill country. Okay? So the Shphelah are basically rolling, smaller hills. Fairly friendly, but they also give you an opportunity to start to build some fortresses there, because they're elevated a little bit above the coastal plain. And if you're wanting to protect yourself from invaders coming along the coast, think about yourself as a mouse for a second, right? If you know that the cats are down here or up here, and that their best way of their route through your land is going to be coming up this plain, and you want to make sure that they don't make raids up into your capital cities or the places where you're storing your grain, right? So you spend all of your year planting and harvesting and storing up your grain. Now a cat comes along and says, hey, I want to invade the other cat up here, and all I can do to feed my army along the way is take the grain from the mice. Then your grain is going to look awfully attractive, right? As you're moving up along this coastal range, they're going to say, hey, there's built-in store areas. Up here, all these mice have been kind enough to store up all of their cheese for us, and so we'll just stop over and take it from them on our way up to attack Assyria, or vice versa, okay? And so what you're going to do as a mouse is you're going to start to build fortresses right here on the transitional areas, so that before they ever get up to your storehouses, they have to come up through your foothills. Does that make sense? So for sure, your most strategic fort is going to be right here in this corner here. That's the place that you want to fortify the most, because you want to keep that cat Egypt from coming up here to your capital. And so if you can keep them down here on the coast, discourage them from coming up these hills, and come into your capital, then you've won at least a part of the battle. You've saved yourself, at least. Does that make sense? So this is going to be one of the most strategic places, and we're going to visit that in a couple of weeks, right down here. And that's in the Shvelah. Okay, let me show you a picture of what the Shvelah looks like. Go, Jage. Okay. You're standing up on one of the hills right now, looking across a valley to some other smaller, low hills over here. Now, these are the kind of hills that you can still travel on a little bit. I mean, obviously, you want to get up on the ridge and travel along the ridge if possible so that you can keep an eye on people around you, but you want to travel either on the ridge or through this valley here, okay? This happens to be the very valley where David fought Goliath. Okay, it's actually right back in here. Okay? Remember the scene with David and Goliath? You had Israel on one set of hills, the Philistines on another set of hills, and they had a valley in between them. And Goliath would stand down there in that valley every day, and he would yell up at the Israelites and say, "Isn't there anybody among you who is a man enough to fight me?" Right? And he would just taunt them all day long until eventually David comes along, right? And he says, "Who is this uncircumcised Philistine who is defying the armies of the Lord?" He says, "Let me go down and fight him." That happened right here in this valley, you guys. There's a little river that runs through it. In fact, when rain falls on the hill country up here, it makes its way down. If it doesn't sink down into the hills themselves, it makes its way down towards the coast, right along little rivers here. So you have what are dry rivers for half of the year when it's the hot time of the year, and more wet when there's rain falling. There's actually rivers that flow. You guys won't know what that's like, right? Where we have some things that are called rivers that hardly ever have water in them until it rains and you get flash flooding and all that. It's exactly what happens there too. Hits those hard mountains, flows down towards the coast on the nice foothills and through the coastal plain. Okay, so this is the Shvelah. Say it with me one more time. Shvelah. Isn't that just relaxing just to say it? Makes me feel good. That's what the Shvelah looks like. Shvelah could be translated as lowlands. Okay, and again, when you think about Shvelah, think about transition between hill country and coastal plain. So it's not flat, but it's also not steep hills that are rocky and forbidding. Make sense? Questions about the Shvelah? Anybody? No question. So this one we're actually, okay, we're looking from, let's see, we're looking from south to north. This valley is running east to west, like this. So we're standing on the south looking towards the north. Bethlehem is going to be right up in here. Okay? Jerusalem just beyond it, back in here. The coast is going to be over here. And this is the hill country over up here. Okay? Let's see. All right, so 5 regions. What else? All right, so we talked about Jerusalem. And let's go to the next slide, Jage. See where we're at. We have no next slide. Perfect. Let's go back a few slides, Jage, to our map. Okay, right there. Oh, go back. Okay. So remember where to find Jerusalem on your map. Okay, where would you find Jerusalem? How would you go about finding it? Yeah, about a third of the way from the Dead Sea to the coast. So right about where that A is, a little bit where my dot is right now. Okay. Again, Jerusalem, where is it going to be topographically? Where are you going to build a major city if you're a mouse? On top of a hill, especially on top of the hill country, right? With all kinds of natural barriers between you and the cats who are coming up and down that coast, okay? And so the natural barriers start with the Shvelah, and so you're going to definitely want some fortresses down there to control that hill country, the coastal plain. You don't want, I mean, maybe it's not a cat, maybe it's just a band of raiders who wants to come in and take your stuff, okay? It doesn't have to be a cat. It can be somebody who may be wandering, what do you call them? They're nomads, right? Nomadic people who live down here in the Negev. And they constantly, when it's hot and dry, they're also thinking, man, I'm hungry. It sure would be nice if I could just go take somebody else's grain. And so they're going to raid up in here and try to take stuff from the hill country. So if you've got fortifications down there, they're going to be watching constantly to make sure there's not raiders coming up from the Negev or the cats coming up from Egypt, okay? And actually, even your cats coming down from the north often found that the best way to attack Jerusalem was not to come this way directly. They would come down through the coast all the way down here and attack these fortified cities and make their way then up this way. That way, once they attack the capital, they don't have these guys coming up on their backside and taking them this way. Make sense? So military strategy is all built around where you have your fortresses and how you keep out the raiders and the cats as they're trying to attack you. All right. One more thing. Well, yeah, verily two more things probably. You remember, when you're reading Scripture, the phrase constantly occurs that you go up to Jerusalem. It doesn't matter where you come from, you always go up to Jerusalem. Okay, now that is topographically true in a sense, because you're up at the top of the hill country. So certainly, if you're coming from negative 1,700 to plus 2,500, you're making your way up. And think about the parable of the Good Samaritan. That happens on the road that comes up from Jericho to Jerusalem. So it comes up considerably, right, from negative 1,700 to plus 2,500. It is a steep uphill road, okay? But no matter where you come from in all of that area, it's said that you're coming up to Jerusalem, even if you're coming from a higher elevation. Even if you were coming from Mount Hermon, for instance, about 4,500 above 5,200, somewhere in that area. You're still said as coming up to Jerusalem. And they mean that not just topographically, but also spiritually. That this is the heart of Israel. And so whenever you come to Jerusalem, you're always coming up to Jerusalem, no matter what direction or what kind of thing you do to get there. And that is, it makes sense topographically, geographically, but there's much more going on than that with that. One final thing to leave you with here. At times when reading Scripture, we have to think like a polytheist. Okay, I don't want you to be polytheists. What is a polytheist? Somebody who believes in many different gods, right? But in order to understand what's going on in our Old Testament, at times we have to think like polytheists. That is, of course, a heretical idea, not meaning to propose that to you. The one true God is constantly warring against this idea in Scripture. He is constantly warring against the idea that there is more than one God. But all of the neighbors, all of the cultures of that day did not think that way. Everyone else was polytheistic. Think about Egypt, for instance, had many different gods. Even when we get into our New Testament, Rome and Greece have a number of different gods. We studied all about them in mythology, right, when we were in junior high or high school. They conceived of the world as existing under the influence of many different local deities, okay? And so they would look at it this way. If you lived out here on the coast, you would have a particular god that you worshipped. Let's say you lived here on the plain of Philistia. Or if you lived up here in the central range in the north, you would have a different god that you worshipped. Because you had different kinds of needs, different kinds of crops, different kinds of livelihood, all those kinds of things would be different for you than the people living down here. Okay? So, if you wanted to move, you and your family, from the coastal plain, from the plain of Philistia, up here to the central range up in the north, you would probably take your local gods with you because they're the gods that you were used to, but you would also want to get to know the gods that reigned over the place where you were about to live. Because if you were going to be successful up here, you needed to worship the God who controlled that area up there. Think about it this way. If you lived in Acton, you would have a particular god. If you lived up in Tehachapi, you would have a different god. And if you lived down here in Lancaster or Palmdale, you'd have a different god here too. Okay? Now, it would be wise for you to get to know that God in the place where you were moving to live, because you wanted to be successful there. That's how they understood the world around them. If you wanted to be successful in farming, in life, in bearing children, in avoiding any kind of calamity, you had to get to know how to make the gods happy, how to manipulate them. And that's what it's all about, is how to manipulate the gods. You would need to know what it might be that would make them happy at this point. Okay? So what kind of offering could you give? What kind of sacrifice could you make? What kind of ritual could you perform? Whatever it might be, in order to make them happy. So there's a lot of guesswork involved in it. But basically the concept was of local deities who ruled over a particular geographical location. They may even be in control of particular kinds of topography or weather conditions or whatever, right? They might be the rain god. They might be the hill god. They might be the valley god. But they'd be completely out of their element if you move them out of that place to a different place. Does that make sense to you guys? So you wouldn't call on a rain god to help you out in the desert because you wouldn't expect rain to happen there. So this is what is reflected in places like 1 Kings 20, chapter 20, verses 23 to 25. If you have your Bibles, turn there. 1 Kings chapter 20, verses 23 to 25. First Kings 20, verse 23 to 25. Let me read it for you. The king of Syria is going to attack the kingdoms of Israel at this point. And so he asks advice from some of his servants, and this is the advice that they give to him, verse 23. And the servants of the king of Syria, now is Syria a cat or a mouse? No. Mouse, yes. It's a mouse. Assyria is a cat. Syria is a mouse. Where is Syria located on our map? Yeah, it's not quite on our map. It's right up here. Okay? Assyria is going to be over here. Okay? Babylon, Assyria, it's going to be on the rest of the Fertile Crescent on that side over here. Syria is a mouse living right here. Okay? So verse 23, and the servants of the king of Syria said to him, their gods are gods of the hill. He's talking about the Israelites here. Their gods are gods of the hills, and so they were stronger than we. He's to explain to them why they lost the last battle. But let us fight against them in the plain, and surely we will be stronger than they. And do this, remove the kings, each from his post, and put commanders in their places, and muster an army like the army that you have lost, horse for horse, and chariot for chariot. Then we will fight against them in the plain, and surely we will be stronger than they. And he listened to their voice and did so. What's he saying here? He's saying that the God of Israel is a hill god. And so if we try to fight on the hills, we're going to lose. So we need to make sure that we get them down on the plains where our God is in control, because then we'll win. And actually, by the way, because our chariots are part of that too. It's our technology as well as our gods that's going to prevail if we can get them to come down into the plain. You guys, does that sound ridiculous to you? Why? Because you're not a polytheist, right? Because you know that there's only one God who rules over the sea and the dry land, who made the heavens and the earth. It's all under his control. And so what happens isn't a matter of which God was stronger in which particular place. It's a matter of the fact that God is in control of all the earth. He plans both good and bad for his people, right? And we talked about that. When they go into exile, the reason for exile isn't that the gods of Babylon were stronger than the gods of Israel. It's that the God of Israel is punishing his people for their idolatry. And he said that this was going to happen to them if they disobeyed him. Does that make sense? That's the major line that's being drawn here. And so geography plays a role in what happens in our Old Testament. But it doesn't play the role that the polytheist thinks that it does, right? It's not a matter of whose God is in control when we move from place to place. It's a matter of the fact that God is in control of all places and that he does with everyone exactly what he determines to be the case. Go ahead, Tina. Yeah.
If they moved location, they took their gods with them?
Yes.
Even though they understood that they would not, was it familiarity?
Well, okay.
Power in the
Yeah, that's a good question. She asked, so if you moved from one place to another, you took your old gods with you. Is it because of familiarity? Yes, that's a part of it. But it's part of actually covering your bases. You want to make sure that you don't offend that God so that if you do happen to move back, that you're going to have that covered still, right? You're going to be able to say, I didn't forsake you when I went to that other place. I still worshiped you too. And so actually, this is what Babylon does when they take Israel into captivity. Remember in Daniel? They have Daniel and his friends, they have them learn all about Babylon and Babylonian culture and language and religion and all of that stuff. They say for 3 years you're going to learn all of that. After that, you're going to teach us about your God. Why? Because we want to add your God to our collection. And so, the more power we have, the more places that we conquer, the more gods we have on our shelf, the more likely we are going to be successful in a wider area of the world. Okay? It's resources. Yeah, it's exactly it. Yeah. Yeah, spiritual resources. You could definitely look at it that way in their understanding. All right? That's it for tonight then. If those of you who want to stick around for the information meeting for Israel, you're welcome to do that. You don't have to leave, but if you want to leave, you can do so at this point as well. Do have some information to pass along to those who are going to Israel. So, JJ, can you get out of there and go? There's another PowerPoint. Maybe it's easier for me to do it. Yeah, there's another one. Just go down here. There it is. Just go to this first slide and run it from there. By the way, before you guys leave, just a second. If you're wanting to go in 2022, we're planning a trip to Israel in October 2022. We don't have dates for that yet, but if you are planning to go, if you'd like to go, if you're just interested in going, just send me an email and just tell me who you are in your email and tell me how many people you'd like to go, and I'll get you on a list for people thinking about going in 2022, all right? And we'll have more meetings and stuff about that in the future, but if you want to get your name in early, this is the time to be doing that. All right, see you guys later. Have a good night. All right, more papers to pass out. Yes?
Is that why Rachel, I was just reading this morning how Rachel knew the gods.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I always wonder, like, why did she bring the
Yeah,
gods?
yeah.
You know what I mean?
She just thinks that moving to a new place, they may come in handy.
So many-
Yeah, that's true. Okay, done with that. Good. Okay, I'll pass these guys around to you guys too. Just take one, pass one around. Same with these. Do that over here as well. If you want to take one and pass them around, that'd be great. Anybody not get the sign-in sheet? Sign-in sheet making around? All right. I'm going to take one for myself. There we go. Yes. There you go. You got it. All right. All right, I'm going to move a little bit quickly with you guys. Don't want to lose your attention here. Got a lot to cover with you as well. Okay, there's a sheet coming around, important information sheets. We can, if you want to go ahead and take those as you get them, it should be about 4 pages. Some things I want to talk with you about, very important, okay? First of those, let's go ahead and start reading them together. In fact, let's go through the PowerPoint first. So the 2020 information meeting, I want to leave time for you guys to ask questions, so we're going to start as quickly as possible. Go ahead to the next slide. Things we want to talk about: flight information, accommodations. We do know most of the, at least almost 100% of the places that we're staying. I'll talk about meals a little bit. And then preparations, what we need to do ahead of time, including physical things, educational things like this class, and the book that I'm going to recommend to you, Spiritual Preparations as well. Okay, next one, Jage. Here's our flight information. You may have gotten this from me already in an email. If you don't have it, please let me know and I will email it to you. This is if you are traveling with us, with Pilgrim Tours as well. If you are not traveling with us, either going, well, I guess it's either way. If you're going early, if you're staying late, you need to let me know as soon as possible, and you definitely need to let Rob Hayes know at Pilgrim Tours as soon as possible on that too. We're going to be finalizing how many seats we have on the plane fairly soon, which has an impact on how much it costs us to go. So if you're thinking that you're going to plan your own airline tickets there or back or both, please let me know. So I have that put together as soon as possible. Okay, but otherwise, what's that? Yes, I can send that to you. This is our flight itinerary. We're departing from LAX on June 14th. There is no arrangement for you to get to LAX from here. So you need to find your own way to LAX, okay? Both there and back, all right? My plan is just to meet you at the gate at LAX. We are going on Lufthansa Flight 457 at 3:10 p.m., Lord willing, June 14th. We're going on through Frankfurt on the way there, arriving in Tel Aviv at 7:05 p.m., okay? When we get to Tel Aviv, it's about a 45-minute ride in the bus. Well, after we go through customs and all that kind of stuff, who knows? It'll be probably 8:30, 9 o'clock before we all get out of customs, get to the bus. And then we actually are staying in Netanya on our first night. It's about a 45-minute drive from Tel Aviv into Netanya, okay? Netanya is where our first hotel night is. We're only there for one night. And our trip begins that next morning, very early. By 8 o'clock, we're going to be on the bus, headed out, okay? So no chance to get over jet lag ahead of time. That's why if you can go earlier, I do recommend doing that. I wish I could go earlier 4 or 5 days. It's just nice to catch up on the time zone before you are saturated with a lot of information and lack of sleep those next days. So I'm not trying to discourage you from not going with the group. If you want to do that, it's a good idea, but I do need to know that. Very soon, please. Okay. Then on our way back, we depart from Tel Aviv. You don't even want to think about departing from Tel Aviv, but we leave there at 6:55 a.m. and then arrive. And we're going through Munich on our way back, and are supposed to be back here the same day at 3:05 p.m. So we get there the same day June 26th. We arrive a day later. We lose a day going there. Coming back, we get back that same day that we leave. Like I said, our meeting point will be at the gate at LAX. Travel to and from LAX is on your own. If you're not planning on traveling with us, please contact Pilgrim Tours. I can tell you how to do that and let them know of your plans. Next slide, Jage. Hotel accommodations. These are the places that we are staying. The possible exception is Tiberias, the Leonardo Club. I'm trying to get that changed. We'll see if that happens or not. But the rest of those are pretty well secured. And you can look those up if you want to, hotels.com, or just look them up on the internet by going to the place, like Island Suites Netanya. And you can look at the pictures of that, whatever you want to do to see that ahead of time. And I can send you this in an email as well, I believe. I want you to know a little bit about meals. So breakfast and dinner are included in our buffet style at all of our hotels. Okay? Breakfast and dinner are buffet style and included in all of our hotels all the way along the way. You are responsible, though, to pay out of your own cash money your lunches. Okay? And most of the places where we'll be traveling around, if you have an itinerary in front of you there, the calendar, the first 6 days, I believe, so it's the 16th through, until we get to Jerusalem, so we get there the 20th, so those first 4 or 5 days, actually, you will have 2 or 3 options for lunch. Usually those options are the same thing as you had the day before, though. So it's only going to be the same 2 or 3 options for those 4 or 5 days. You will get tired of those things almost certainly. It's usually falafel or shawarma or what's called a chicken cutlet in a pita with salad kind of stuff on it. That's basically what you can get for lunch, and a soda. And that's really your 2 or 3 choices. When we're out traveling around, there's just not a lot for choices for eating. I would recommend, you guys listen carefully, I would recommend bringing some energy bars or protein bars or snacks with you, particularly if you get sick of the food or you just plain don't like Mediterranean food. It's good to have some other things as backups. You will have opportunity to buy ice cream or other snacks or other sodas along the way as well, but you would be highly advised, especially for those first 6 days, to have something that you know you will enjoy eating in case you get hungry. Okay? You may also be able to, at the morning buffet, you may be able to grab some stuff. I wouldn't count on that necessarily, but you may be able to grab some fruit or vegetables or something to stick in your pockets and carry around with you all day. All right? All right, Mark? Am I good on that? Okay. So lunches are on your own. Outside of Jerusalem, plan on about $20 to $25 a day per person for food and snacks. That can be either American dollars or shekels. Okay? And I'll talk about that in a minute here. That'll be in our paperwork too. Like I said, lunches are on your own. Outside of Jerusalem, there'll be 2 to 3 options. In Jerusalem, you'll have more options and much more variety once you get to Jerusalem. Pizza, hamburgers without cheese, all kinds of stuff like that. Okay? And yeah, in the new city of Jerusalem, there's a McDonald's and all that kind of stuff as well. Beautiful hotels. You can get as fancy a meal as you'd like to get in New Jerusalem as well. It takes a little bit of effort to get there, but we'll figure that out. All right, questions on any of this so far? Questions so far? Yes, please.
So, you were saying that Tiberias, that you're thinking about a different hotel?
Yeah.
What's the reason?
No comment. All right, I just want to get us a little bit closer to the Sea of Galilee itself. You can get there from the Leonardo Club. It's just nice to be right on it. So unfortunately, those things book up really fast. And so even though I booked our trip like a year and 3 or 4 months before we're going to be there, all the places that are maybe for top choice were taken before that. So it's not terrible. I haven't been to the Leonardo Club, but I'm just looking for a place that I have been to that I really like, and so far that's not possible. So next.
So we should pray, right?
Yeah, absolutely, pray. Then another group cancels. About 45 people pray that they cancel, and they don't want that place anymore. If you want to pray by name, it'd be Engev or Engev, or what's the other one called? Magadan. Okay, yes.
Will they take American currency, or will that change?
They will. We'll get to that. They will. Most places will take American dollars. You want to have American dollars in smaller denominations because you'll get change in shekels. If you have a $20 bill and lunch is $12, they're going to give you change in shekels. And sometimes the exchange rate doesn't really work in your favor. So I'd actually have some of both, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. Okay, preparations. So physical. You need to be walking like now. Okay, I'm absolutely serious about this, you guys. You need to be hiking. And you need to be hiking in the kinds of shoes that you're going to be wearing there. So comfortable hiking type shoes. And I'm not just talking about walking on sidewalks necessarily, like miles on sidewalks. That'll be helpful. But walk on some uneven ground as well. Take some hikes and nature hikes. Go up and down rocky terrain. Just get yourself in good physical condition, because we will be doing a lot of moving around. And you're going to want to get off the bus and go places, okay? And we're only there for 2 weeks, but you want to push yourselves for those 2 weeks because you want to see everything that you possibly can and soak it all in. So, yeah, at least 3-mile hikes. And when it starts to get warmer, do that in the heat too. So you get some used to that sweating and all of that, what kinds of stuff you want to wear to be comfortable. I don't want to scare you with this. I'm going to try to make it as comfortable as possible. We will be off and on a bus, a comfortable air-conditioned bus. You will get chances. It's not going to be 5 miles at a time, generally, unless we get into Jerusalem. There'll be some days where we will walk maybe 5 miles at a time, just maybe once or twice, you guys. And that'll be at the tail end of our trip, so you'll have some build-up or breakdown, depending on who you are, I guess, to that. But you guys, you want to be able to do this physically. And again, I don't want to scare you. I'm going to be as gentle as I possibly can on you. But I also want to take you to a lot of places. And that means we're going to have to run where Jesus walked at times. Or jog where Jesus, well, not run. I'm not really saying that. But our pace will be faster than a leisurely stroll. Okay? The fortunate thing is, you guys, they give us these devices that are radios. So I'll have a microphone, and you'll have a receiver, and you'll be able to hear me as you're following around. So I don't have to yell, and you don't have to be right next to me to hear me. The wonderful thing about them is that once you start to get out of range, they give you a shock, an electric shock, to remind you that you're a little bit too far. And it's not a fatal one at first, but if you get too far and it gets you to the second shock, that one really hurts. The third shock you probably won't recover from. Nobody has in the past. So okay, the radio part is serious. The other part is only semi-serious. I'm going to take with me a staff or a slingshot or whatever I need. Actually, I'm going to have Christian Powers in the back, and he's going to have a whip of scorpions if he needs a whip of scorpions. It's important, you guys, to be ready and to enjoy it, okay? So work now, and you'll be fine. Work now, and you'll be fine, okay? That's physical. Class, right now, what you're doing in class, I think it's really good to be prepared. I think Mark would tell you as well. He would have enjoyed being prepared that first time. I'm putting together a book for you. Mark, did you bring your book? Okay, so you'll have a notebook. This was the prototype here that we're working through. It'll come in a spiral, not like this, like a 3-ring binder, but a spiral-bound book for you with a little bit of a harder cover. It has pictures and maps and places to take notes and all that kind of stuff that I'm putting together for you right now. So at this moment, I think it's about 150 pages. Oh, no, it's 156 pages, but it may get a little bit bigger than that by the time we go. So this will be kind of you'll have this with you everywhere you go. You'll have a Bible with you everywhere you go. I'm not putting the Bible passages in here because I want you to have your Bible. I want you to get used to, while you're there, looking at your Bible while looking at the things around you, because this is the Bible you're going to be using when you get back. So I want you to have the actual Bible you're going to be reading. But you'll want one that's portable, right? You don't want your ESV study Bible. You don't want to take that one with you, unless you're bringing an extra backpack or a mule or something with your llama. I don't know. You don't want to bring that one, but bring something that's it's big enough font that you can read it, but also something you can carry reasonably. Okay. And spiritual preparations, you guys pray now. Start reading your Bibles now and praying, okay, through some things. If you have this book, Journey with Jesus to Israel, start reading it now. Look up some of the passages that are available in there. This basically follows the same itinerary that we're doing. We'll do some things, and you'll be able to compare it with the itinerary we have in here. There's some things that they don't do that we do. And maybe, I don't think there's anything that they do that we don't do, but we do some extra things. Start reading that now, thinking about those things, praying about those things, asking God to prepare you spiritually for this trip. Everything you do ahead of time, physical, spiritual, mental. If you don't have this book, get it. It's called Journey with Jesus to Israel. Dudley Rutherford is the author. You can find it on Amazon, okay? It's like $14.99, $15, something like that, okay? Prepare. Okay, let's go to the next one. Oh, packing. I do have a packing list for you. We're going to go through it here as we have time. This is what I take as my day pack. So you'll want to, you're allowed, I think, did we look at 2 suitcases? They're allowed 2 suitcases of 25 kilos each? Is that what it was from the, do you remember we looked at Lufthansa? Was it 1 25 kilo? I think that's what the Lufthansa was, is you get one included 25 kilo, which is 50 pounds, bag to take with you, and then a carry-on as well. I would recommend having this in something like this, a day pack, that will have room for a notebook about this size, your Bible, pens, snacks, and I think one of the most important things to me, well, definitely water. I do a Camelback. So a bladder like this goes in right inside of this. This is a Camelback. Yeah, so this is a bladder. This is, yeah, the backpack. Camelback is the company that makes bladders that go in backpacks like this. So you can find, Camelback will have a backpack like this. If you're interested, if you want to know what size or whatever, you want something that has some ventilation in the back, that's nice and comfortable. You might wear this on your hikes, fill it with some stuff, so you're used to having that around with you. This is, I recommend like at least a 2-liter water bladder. Okay, this goes right in your pack. You can put it in the freezer overnight and freeze half of it, and then fill the rest of it with water, and it's nice and cold for the first couple of hours. And then it's just easy to have it on your back and drinking while you're going. But get used to it. Some people don't like them. Mandy said she didn't like one. I got it on Amazon. Yeah. 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 Yeah, you will drink a lot of water, and I'll be asking you to drink a lot of water. You don't want to get dehydrated, because then you'll get stupid, honestly. You just won't remember anything. You'll be miserable, and it's just not fun. So you'll have to stay on the bus when everybody else is going and doing fun stuff. So yeah, drink lots of water ahead of time. Get yourself physically ready to go before time. Yeah. Their water is fantastic. They have great water. It's better than ours is probably. So they do amazing things with water in Israel. So you'll be able to fill it from the tap in the hotel rooms if you want to. I mean, if you're comfortable with that, I'm comfortable with it. You can buy bottled water everywhere, even during the day. You can buy some bottled water in places as well. It's excellent. So yeah, better than our water is. So. Excuse me. Yeah, ice isn't the norm there for. They're used to American tourists liking ice, but most of the other people in the world don't have ice. So have comfortable shoes, have hiking shoes for most of the time. Socks are very important, I think, for keeping your feet comfortable and all that. So know what kind of hiking socks you like and get used to them or whatever ahead of time. But wear the shoes that you're going to wear. Don't buy a brand new pair of shoes that you're going to start the first day in Israel with. Have them broken in, have your feet broken into them, whatever it takes. I also like to have a pair of outdoor sandal type shoes, and actually for Hezekiah's tunnel, this is extremely important that you have something that is waterproof, that you can walk in and not ruin, and not just have soaking wet socks all the rest of the day as well. We'll go through Hezekiah's tunnel early on a particular day, so you're going to want to have water shoes or sandals like these at some time too. But wear these, if you're going to wear those there, wear them here before you do. Again, make sure that your feet are accustomed to them. I also have my converter. So this goes into the wall plug in Israel. This one I like because it has 2 USB ports on it. So that's really all I take that needs to be charged is my phone and maybe my tablet or whatever. So I can plug in 2 USB cords to this one and just plug it into the wall. If you need a hairdryer or other things that require a converter, know what those are, because it's not just this. It would be an actual step-down converter, or what are those called? Transformer. This one I got from Amazon. I've got information on it here too. You can just look up electricity Israel plug on Amazon, and you'll find it. Okay, it's on your sheet here. All right, we're going to go a little bit past 8:30. Sorry about that, you guys, but a lot of information here. Okay, well, let's go to the next slide. Oh, questions. Any questions? All right, let me walk through this before you ask questions. Let me walk through this. I think this information is pretty thorough, and it might just generate more questions for you, and that's okay. If you want to email me with other questions, or if you want to come with them next week or whatever, write down your questions as you think of them. Ask me when you get a chance to. It's good to ask in a group, because then everybody can hear your. They may think of asking a question that you hadn't thought of asking, but you wanted to know that information. So let me walk you through this quickly. This is something I stole from Dr. Bookman, and so it's really in his voice, so there's going to be some strange terminology in here are ways of saying things that you might say, that doesn't sound, but that's okay. That's what we'll walk through it quickly. So a word of counsel, he says you would be well advised to have copies of the face page of your passport with you. You don't have to carry your passport with you everywhere in Israel. In fact, you shouldn't carry your passport with you everywhere in Israel. You should lock it in your hotel safe at night with anything else that you want to load in there. Okay, so don't take your passport with you, but have a copy of your passport, a photocopy of your passport with you. I also recommend having that in your luggage, so each piece of your luggage along the way as well. Okay. Regarding currency in Israel, this is one you guys have already been asking. It's number 2 on our list there. Most places take American dollars in Israel, but you are well advised to use NIS, which is New Israeli Shekels, wherever you can. The first opportunity to change money in the land will be in the baggage claim area at the airport. The rate is decent but not great, so you'd be wise to change only enough money for the first few days. During the early days of the trip, it is not easy to find a place to change money, although it is generally possible to find an ATM. I don't think you're going to get stuck anywhere in the first 6 days just using dollars, right? I don't think so. But it's not a bad idea. Okay, he also says one other suggestion down here. Probably the easiest, handiest, and most economical way to secure Israeli shekels is to go to your own bank and order them to pick up before you depart. I've done this numerous times with Chase. I just walk in 2 weeks before I go, and I tell them I need $200 worth of Israeli shekels. And you got to be careful to tell them you want $200 worth of Israeli shekels, because they'll maybe look at that differently than you will. And they'll have it for you. 3 or 4 days, they'll give you a call, say they're in, come pick them up. They'll take it right out of your bank account, and it's a decent exchange rate. And when you get back, if you have shekels left over, you can sell them back to your bank, and they'll buy them at the same rate that they sold them to you. Okay? Simple, easy. I know Chase does it. I'm sure other banks do as well. So the Chase rate over here on K has done that for me a number of times. It's super easy. Yeah, Jage? I don't remember. Yeah, it wouldn't take long to find out if you got a currency. What's that? A lot of shekels. It's like 23? Oh, 3? Is it 3:45? Okay. Yeah, it's been a while since I thought in shekels.
Is that 200 per person?
200 per person? Yeah, I'd say that's about reasonable. Yeah. You can also use your credit card almost anywhere where you're going to buy souvenirs. And basically, we won't buy souvenirs until we get to Jerusalem, most likely. Jerusalem's the best place to go to buy souvenirs because they have the most variety. You can find almost anything you can find anywhere else. And there's much more competition there, which means the prices are right. And I can take you to guys who will sell you at a fair price. And they won't. You can if you want to, go and haggle with your dealers there, right? You can, and if you love to play that game or whatever, you can do the haggle thing. But I can take you to a place where he'll just give you the price, and it may be just a slightly more than you could bargain down for. But anyway, I can work through that all with you. There's places that are safe to buy that are used to American tourists that and very helpful. Like Omar is amazing. Yeah, and Christian, a Christian guy, and so he's amazing. He'll know your name the second time you come back. He'll know your name. It'll be great. So I'll introduce you to him. If you want to have the experience of haggling over stuff, you can do that too. But you're going to lose. I'm just telling you. These guys do this 24 hours a day in all kinds of languages. That's their business. So you're going to lose. So like I said, I suggest you figure about $20 per person per day for lunch plus snacks. Medical insurance, number 3, look over to number 3. There is an opportunity through Pilgrim to buy trip insurance that also includes medical insurance. The difficulty with that, you guys, is that they will, Israeli medicine is great, probably better than ours are. You guys, I mean, you talk about Jewish doctors in the States, right? Well, there are Jewish doctors in Israel, turns out. And so their medical system is fantastic. And so you don't have to worry about any of that. But they do demand that you pay before you leave. Like you can't leave the door without paying them. And most likely your insurance company in the States, they'll reimburse you sometime maybe, although mine won't. I'm on my own if I travel out of California, let alone out of the country, okay? So they may reimburse you, but it's going to be a long process. It's going to take a while. This one here, number 3, if you go to this company and buy their thing, I think it's $6 or $7 a day, maybe less than that. And they will pay the bill before you leave with cash, and you don't have to worry about it. So I would go to that. The thing is, you can't apply more than 10 days before you leave. So you'll need to remember to do that close to the time of departure. Okay, if you call them now and say, I want this insurance, they'll laugh at you and say, call me in the beginning of June. Okay. Note regarding electronic devices, you can read through that. Regarding electricity, that's, like I said, this thing here. Weather, number 6. No matter what season you are in Israel, be assured that there will be remarkable swings in the temperature throughout the trip and very possibly in the course of a day, particularly in Jerusalem. Be prepared for that. Layer your clothes so that you can shed outerwear and then put them back on as necessary. It may be cool when we get on the bus in the morning, but by the time we get off the bus, the first stop, it's probably going to be warm. Okay? So be prepared to take off a jacket or add a jacket or whatever that might be. If you run hot or cold, just know where you're at. Daytime temperatures are going to be upper 80s most of the places where we are in Israel. One day it'll be up in the 110s, probably 115 maybe. Other days, more likely 80s, maybe low 90s for highs, and then lows in the high 60s in Jerusalem in particular. Okay. Number 7, I encourage you to journal on the trip. Notes taken along the way, and then a nightly entry reviewing the travels and lessons and impressions of that day. I will have in your book a quiz for each day as well, that I'd encourage you to go through that quiz that day, because one day will run into another day, and you'll say, I remember seeing that, but I don't remember when or where, all that kind of stuff. So each day, if you end the day by doing a review on your own, you will be much advantaged by doing that, right? It just cements what you've learned during that day. And you'll be exhausted. You'll get back to your hotel and not want to do anything but fall asleep. But just that few minutes of review will really be helpful to you. Okay? So review your notes, review your pictures, and actually each day, look at the pictures that you took and write down, picture 1 was taken here at this place, picture 2 here at that place. Because again, you'll get back home, and in a couple weeks, you'll say, okay, I'll do that. And then a couple weeks, 3 weeks go by, 4 weeks go by, and then you look at your pictures and say, I don't know where that was, when that was. It all looks the same to me, right? But if you look at them and label them and journal, maybe just, in your journal, just write down picture 1 was this place, and this is why I took this picture, all that kind of stuff, that would be really helpful to you.
Note it in your book too.
Oh, yeah.
That makes it easy.
Yeah. And there's margins in there, all that kind of stuff you'll be able to write down. Yeah, picture 1 taken here, all that kind of stuff. That's great advice there, Mark. Okay. Number 8, a note regarding laundry. It is really difficult to find laundry facilities along the way. On the other hand, the hotel in Jerusalem has a very good, very speedy, and quite reasonable laundry service. Now, we are staying at a different hotel than I have been at in Jerusalem, but I did go to the hotel in Jerusalem knowing which one it was going to be, and it looks like a really nice hotel. It's about a mile from the old city, and it does have laundry facilities there. And they say they will do your laundry, like you put it in a bag, pay for this many socks, this many whatever, and they get it back to you. Or I think you may be able to do your own laundry there as well. Like they'll have machines that you can pay to do your laundry in. Make sense?
You can do it in the sink.
Yeah,
Just
yep.
know that it's going to take some time because the humidity is huge.
Yeah.
So you can't just expect it to dry overnight.
Yeah.
You gotta plan.
Yeah. If you're good at doing your laundry in the sink, that's great. Yeah, and it is. It kind of depends on how you want to pack. If you want to pack so you don't ever have to do laundry and carry a huge suitcase with you, you're certainly welcome to do that. You'll have to hassle getting it on and off the bus pretty much every day until we get to Jerusalem, where we'll be for 6 days, and then you don't have to worry about moving it again. But there's a balance there between having too much stuff and not having enough stuff. So any advice you want on that, I can try, but I think it's almost personal too. Like the way that I might pack and the way you might pack might be a little bit different on that too. Okay. Number 9. Yeah, we don't need to. I just want you to read through this on your own, you guys, and make sure if you have any questions. I don't think there's anything more that we need to cover on these pages. Here's the suggested packing list. Just run through this quickly with you. Passport documents and finances. So you want your passport, your airplane tickets, copies of your passport. Yeah, it would be horrible. A nightmare for me, you guys. You get all the way to the gate at LAX and say, oh, I forgot my passport. Because you're going nowhere at that point, you guys. And I know a lot of you aren't used to carrying your passports. So I don't know how many times you're going to check it before you leave. I do. I travel a lot, and that's one thing that I always panic about. Because I can buy everything else. If I don't have my passport, I'm stuck. So I don't want you to panic over that, but just be sure. You put your passport in a place where you know where it is. Okay? Airline ticket copies of passport carrier. That's mostly for traveling on the plane. there and back. You know, you want to maybe one of those belts or something you put your passport in because you're going to be getting it in and out constantly. Some people like having that. You know, maybe security reasons for that too. But you won't need it in Israel itself. Like you're not going to be carrying your passport every day with you in Israel. Okay. Hard currency, again, small to medium denominations. Okay, one other thing I forgot to tell you. So $20 a day or so for lunches. There's also a one-time $20 fee that is for the radios that we carry. Okay, that's not included in our trip. That's the company charges us for those when we get there, but indispensable, $20. I mean, the value that you will get out of that is way beyond. So, I mean, there's no way to get around that. You're going to want to have that anyway. What was the other thing? There was one other thing that I thought cash for. That's not included in our, what else is not included? You mean a visa? Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so. What's that? Just that $20 for the for the listening device that you have? Oh, tip for me, you mean? Oh, yeah. No, thanks for mentioning that. But no, it wasn't. There's something else. Anyway, I'll come back to it. It'll come back to me. Hard currency, driver's license, health insurance information. You want to take that kind of stuff with you. Who's your health provider? All that kind of stuff. Again, bring credit cards. Tell your credit card company ahead of time that you're traveling. Open up that travel restriction or whatever on that. Take that with you. International student ID card. That just you can get some discounts some places. Anybody have an international student ID? Okay, that doesn't apply to this group. That's okay. Travel, again, your luggage, backpack, carry-on with identification, snacks. I do recommend bringing some snacks with you. Like I said, just good to have the things that you're used to, having those with you. Once you get to Jerusalem, you'll be able to replenish those things, buy most of what you're looking for. Light disposable reading material for the flight, whatever. I like to have a Kindle or something electronic to read with. If you like earplugs or eye cover for your flight. Travel alarm, most of us would probably use our phone as a travel alarm. It is important to have that when you don't want to miss the bus in the morning. So don't oversleep, right? Have your alarm set, make sure you know what time and all that to be there. And I'll be sure to communicate that clearly with you. We'll have an app that we actually can communicate with everybody else as well that way. We can talk about that another time. Travel electronic transformer, small pocket calculator for money exchange. Again, that'll be an app on your phone most likely. But it's nice to know ahead of time, how much am I spending? Right, because you get used to seeing the price in shekels and you'll say, oh, well, that sounds cheap. And you're all of a sudden spending hundreds of dollars where you thought you were spending tens of dollars just because you're not used to the exchange rate. So it's really nice to have a travel or a calculating currency on your app on your phone. Clothing, again, this is kind of individualized, but you want 2 or 3 pairs of comfortable pants or shorts or skirts, something that's easy to wash, loose-fitting, and modest, and we'll talk about modesty here in a moment. 3 or 4 sports shirts, polos, T-shirts, no tank tops, you guys don't. It is technically not immodest to wear tank tops in some places, but I just say leave that stuff at home. You guys, we don't need tank tops there. Maybe you get hot, but it's just safest not to have that so you can be modest everywhere that you go. Sweater or a light jacket, you might think, okay, it's going to be 115 degrees, but not everywhere. And some places you're going to want to be out in the evening, particularly in Jerusalem, so it's nice to have a light jacket or a sweater for the evening there. Undergarments for at least 5 days. Swim shorts or one-piece bathing suit for women. We're going to go into the Dead Sea and probably have a chance to dip into the Sea of Galilee, maybe probably not into the Mediterranean. Sorry, you guys. That's just the way that our schedule works this time. We may not get into the Mediterranean. We'll try, but we're pressed for time that day. We're only there for 1 day, and it's maybe not work for us. Sorry about that. But have a pair of swimming trunks for that, those things. At least 5 pair of comfortable walking socks, 1 or 2 long sleeve shirts, comfortable walking shoes. Again, I recommend like hiking tennis shoes, something with good arch support, something you feel comfortable in. Old discardable shoes, they don't have to be discardable shoes, but not flip-flops, but something that you can strap to your feet and walk through about 3/4 of a mile of water up to your knees. Yeah. Modesty, here we go. The Middle East cultures generally dress much more modestly than Western cultures. Muslims and Orthodox Jews have very stringent standards of modesty, which they will enforce or comment upon. A woman dressed immodestly by their standards is likely to be publicly rebuked by total strangers. Extremely tight or short shorts should not be worn at all. Modest shorts such as Bermuda type, well, we don't really call them Bermuda anymore. They're called like capri capri pants or something. What did you call them? Shorts or capri pants for women, right?
Yeah, but if you're wearing shorts, I mean, they would be Bermuda, they would be longer.
Yeah, you want them to like right at knee, right to your knee or right below your knee for shorts. Okay. I wear cargo shorts. That's what I like. Yeah, cargo shorts.
If women are wearing shorts, then they need to carry a skirt with them in their backpacks because we do go into places where you have to have your knees covered.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, in order to avoid that, I just wear capri pants that cover my knees and shirts that have sleeves on them that cover your shoulders.
Right.
But if you're going to wear a sleeveless top or you're going to wear shorts, then you're going to need to have, a maxi skirt and a sweater in your backpack to throw on when we go into the churches like that would require more modest.
Right. It's especially Catholic churches that do that, Orthodox churches, but anything Muslim related to, the Temple Mount, that kind of stuff too. So it's not every day all the time, but you want to be prepared every day all the time. Okay? So just have something in your backpack or something you're carrying on the bus or whatever that you can throw on if I say, hey, this is a modesty stop. Just make sure that you're ready for that. Okay?
Is that those same for the guys with the short length?
Yes, it's supposed to come to the bottom of your knee. Well, I have never been stopped with cargo shorts that were right at my knee. I've never had a problem with that. So I would say right at your knee. Yeah, you can have the zip-off pants that you can just zip them up onto there if you want to, or whatever too. So does it make sense, kinda?
Yeah, is that for like just the modest areas, or is that for every?
That's just the modest areas. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right. But yeah, to me, it's just easiest to always be that because then you don't have to worry about it. Just if you're always in a modest kind of dress, then you never have to worry about it. And the last thing we want to do is be offensive to people when we're visiting their country and things too. So I just err towards the conservative side of that. And it's 2 weeks. So I know it gets hot and uncomfortable or whatever, but I just think it's best to be as conservative as we can be with that. Okay. No tank tops, halter tops, or anything that exposes the shoulder should not be worn. Okay. Note modest dress, which means shoulder, midriff, and legs covered, will be required at certain sites, especially Catholic churches and sites. On some day trips, you will be asked to carry a modesty kit, that is skirt wrap and sweatpants or warm-ups that can be carried in your backpack and put on as need arises. Fashion isn't the issue. Modesty and ease of getting in and out of the outfit are the issues. Okay, photography, for most, a cell phone camera will suffice. You have an iPhone particularly or whatever, that's going to be fine. If we have somebody on the trip who's a really great photographer, because digital photography is free, right? If somebody wants to volunteer to be a really good photographer and take lots of really good pictures and then just give it to us digitally, that's fantastic. Then none of the rest of us have to worry about taking pictures everywhere we go. And I'm not particularly good at photography and end up not taking a lot of pictures, but I have a lot of good pictures that I've got from other people along the way. So I think to me, again, on a trip like this, you're going to want to be there. And so being there is more important than having a picture of being there. And those pictures can come later to be remembrances, but if you didn't have to take the picture and be distracted and maybe wander a little bit away and then not hear what was going on, I'd rather err towards that side a little bit. Let somebody else take the pictures. If you want to, there are people who have taken the pictures who you can buy them from at a later time too. That's a lot of the slides that I'm using are ones that I've bought from people. So to me, it's almost worth it to spend $150 to buy somebody else's pictures so that I'm not distracted the whole time wondering if I'm taking good enough pictures. So that's up to you though too. Okay, toiletries, just read through that list. This is a beyond what you probably need. I'm not saying that you have to have everything on this list. Band-Aids, Tylenol, aspirin, whatever. It's nice to have those things in case something goes wrong, but you guys, that's all up to you too. If you got everything on here, you're probably not going to fit it in your suitcase. So you have to throw some things out. These are suggestions, not musts on our packing list. Okay. Educational materials. Some of these are musts. Well, you don't have to take a Bible atlas. You need a Bible. Both Old and New Testament. Surprisingly enough, there is a New Testament, you guys. You may want to refer to it every once in a while. I know we'll spend a lot of time in the Old Testament, but have a New Testament with you too. Okay. Bibles on phones are okay. It can be difficult because of the sunlight and brightness sometimes to read your Bible outdoors on a phone. So that kind of depends on you and how comfortable you feel with that. I'm okay with that, but there may be times when it'd be just nicer to have a paper Bible. There'll be places where we can just sit and meditate, think for a little while, read through some things, and to me that's a little bit nicer on a paper Bible, where you can sit and just kind of do something devotional out of a paper Bible. But if that's different from different people too. So I'd recommend having both. Have it on your phone, but especially if you're quick with your phone and you can get to things quickly, that way that's fine. You want a notebook and an extra paper, Israel travel book, that's really, I'll provide that for you. Just before you depart, we're going to give you that book. I'm not going to carry them all with me. I'm going to give them to you before we leave so you can take them and put them in your luggage, maybe your carry-ons to look through on your way there. Maps will be included in that. Pens, coloring markers, highlighters, pencils, those kinds of things might be helpful as you're looking through your books. Okay. Small flashlight is actually really handy for when we go through Hezekiah's tunnel, especially the head-mounted ones. So you can be kind of walking through and not paying attention to dropping your flashlight or shining it in somebody's eyes or whatever. So it is nice to have a little head-mounted flashlight for Hezekiah's tunnel. They're small and easy to carry. Binoculars, I'm planning to buy a pair of binoculars. There's some places where we can look across a wide range and see some things if we have binoculars with us. You guys, are you getting anxious to leave? Am I? Okay. I'm trying to go through this fast, but try to be thorough as well. So binoculars, compass can be really helpful to orient yourself, right? So you're not just saying, oh man, which way am I looking again? Like you get on the bus, get off the bus again. Okay, it just can be really helpful to orient yourself. So if you have an app with a compass on it or whatever that might be, it's just helpful sometimes to know where in the world you are and which direction you're looking at. Getting turned around, yeah. Your GPS might be helpful for that too. A diary or journal, again, if you aren't used to diarying or journaling, I'd recommend just doing it for this couple of weeks because things fade, and you'll be amazed when you look back and you say, oh, wow, I forgot that I had thought that when I was sitting there.